Imagine a world where the United States and Russia were not enemies but partners. A world where two of the most powerful nations in history joined forces instead of competing for dominance. From the ashes of World War II, these two superpowers emerged with starkly different ideologies. One championing capitalism and democracy, the other committed to communism and state control. But what if, instead of descending into decades of Cold War rivalry, they had found a way to cooperate? Would the world be more peaceful? Would we have reached space faster? And most importantly, who, if anyone, would be left to challenge their dominance? The United States and the Soviet Union were allies during World War II, working together to defeat Nazi Germany. But after the war, tensions between them escalated. The US feared the spread of communism, while the Soviet Union distrusted Western motives. But what if President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin had forged a stronger relationship before Roosevelt's death in 1945? What if, instead of dividing the world into two ideological camps, they had agreed on a shared vision for global stability? In this timeline, the Marshall Plan wouldn't just rebuild Western Europe. It would also include Eastern Europe, preventing the formation of the Iron Curtain. NATO and the Warsaw Pact would never exist. And instead of a divided Germany, Berlin could have become the center of a unified global alliance. Without Cold War tensions, the space race would have looked completely different. Instead of competing to put a man on the moon, the United States and the Soviet Union could have pooled their resources for joint space missions. By the 1960s, a joint US-Soviet space program might have put a multinational crew on the moon much earlier. Instead of the Apollo program, we could have seen a combined effort, using Soviet rocket technology and American funding. With no arms race or nuclear standoff, the technological advancements of the Cold War era could have been redirected towards science, medicine, and global development. With the US and Soviet Union united, the biggest question becomes, who, if anyone, could challenge them? Would China have remained a communist stronghold, or would it have been pressured to align with the West? Would the Middle East have avoided decades of proxy wars? Would European nations have maintained independence, or would they have been absorbed into a superpower-controlled alliance? Without a Cold War, the world's balance of power could have been completely rewritten. The Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis may have never happened. But instead, other conflicts may have emerged, perhaps even a new ideological divide between a US-Soviet alliance and a rising China. In this alternate timeline, the 21st century unfolds in a radically different way. With no Cold War, Russia never undergoes a chaotic post-Soviet collapse. It remains a strong, developed nation aligned with the West. That means Ukraine never becomes a geopolitical flashpoint. Instead of tension between NATO and Russia, Ukraine thrives as a central hub between two allied superpowers. Would Ukraine have been a major economic power rather than a battlefield? Would Europe have looked completely different today? Could the United States and Russia ever have been true allies? The ideological gap between capitalism and communism made it nearly impossible. But what if leaders had prioritized cooperation over division? Would we live in a world with fewer wars, faster technological advancements, and no fear of nuclear destruction? Or would this alliance have simply delayed conflict, creating an even bigger power struggle in the future? One thing is certain. The Cold War shaped our world as we know it. And without it, history would have taken a dramatically different path. What do you think? Would a US-Russia alliance have made the world better or worse? Share your thoughts in the comments.